Sunak said solving the crisis is one of his top priorities.
I'm confident that we can get the numbers down, but I also want to be honest with people that it isn't a single thing that will magically solve this. We can't do it overnight, but people should be absolutely reassured that this is a top priority for me. I'm gripping it, and as I've said, in the time that I've been Prime Minister, you're already starting to see some progress with this deal with the French, but that's just a start. There's lots more that we need to do.
Well, at the G20 summit, where you saw Rishi Sunak speaking there, the Prime Minister urged world leaders to work together to fix global economic instabilities. He's due to address the summit later on today. As he arrived in Indonesia, Rishi Sunak said Thursday's autumn budget will put the UK's public finances on a sustainable trajectory, while the Chancellor warned that taxpayers will need to pay more to balance the books. Ukraine's president has said the recapture of the eastern city of Kherson is the beginning of the end of the war with Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky was speaking to troops on a visit to the city just days after Russian forces retreated following months of occupation. He's accused Moscow of committing more than 400 war crimes in the wider region of Kherson. Here, 4 members of an organised crime gang that stole £400,000 in a series of armed robberies have been jailed. The gang used a fleet of stolen cars to travel to and from the heists, which took place in London, Oxford, Bedfordshire and Nottinghamshire between 2018 and 2019. Armed with handguns, metal crowbars, axes and knives, and dressed in body armour with balaclavas, they targeted cash vans. One man was sentenced to 13 years in jail and the other 3 to 9 years at Kingston Crown Court today. In Scotland, the Scottish Child Payment has now been extended to all eligible children under the age of 16. It was initially only given to families with under 6-year-olds. Poverty campaigners have described the move as a watershed moment, as around 400,000 children in Scotland will now be eligible. And lastly, gun salutes have been fired across London today to mark His Majesty King Charles's 74th birthday. And the gun salute was accompanied by Buckingham Palace also releasing a new image of the King. He's pictured leaning against an oak tree as he replaces his father as Ranger of Windsor Great Park, a position that dates back more than 4 centuries. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Headliners.
Hello, welcome to Headliners. Joining me tonight, 2 brilliant comedians, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. I'm Simon Evans, your host. Let's take a quick look at tomorrow's front pages. We start with the Daily Mail. Of course, nurses paying price of migrant crisis, and a photograph of Prince Charles leaning against an oak tree which appears to have died. The Eye reads, Starmer raise UK taxes for Amazon and non-doms, not lower earners. Picture of him there looking very earnest about that. The Guardian reads, Tory councils warn Sunak on stark risk of bankruptcy, and a couple of manlets having a laugh over a lunch table. Financial Times reads, Taiwan tensions overshadow Biden and Xi's push to improve relations. The Times reads, Sunak will help poorest by boosting living wage. And there are those 2 dignitaries shaking hands again. The Metro reads, sealed with a kiss. Yes, we can. And finally, the Star reads, it's a clucking disgrace. Egg shortages to top off all the other bad news. Those were your front pages. Let's take a closer look inside. So we start with the front page of the Times, Josh, which has got a couple of major stories.
Yeah, so we've got a lovely big picture there of President Xi, or as I like to call him, 11, and Biden, and they're
First
giving
11 in China.
First 11, that's what they do. That's what they say of him. Yeah, give peace a chance. And they both look quite happy there. I think that's a genuine smile. Actually, supposedly President Xi is like a real germaphobe. He's very paranoid of COVID.
Right.
I suppose he has some inside information on it. Anyway, but yeah, Biden's
Nevertheless, that's an unmitigated handshake.
Yeah, that's a proper handshake there. But Biden's got a mild cold, and he still went for the handshake there.
He looks a little bit Botoxed, Biden. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe it's just the photograph. He looks younger.
He does. Yeah, he looks. Yeah, exactly. And but yeah, it was a 3-hour meeting. This is the first time they've met since Biden's become president.
Yeah.
And
did they discuss the fact that he sent missiles over his Secretary of State's head? No, it was the Leader of the House, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if that came up. They did talk about Taiwan, but the big ones were they wanted to stress. By the way, there's not going to be a new Cold War.
No.
And they wanted.
We've already got one of those.
Because we've got one. Yeah. It's not going to get any colder. Yeah. Shall we say that? Also, they are saying that they want to both underscore that their opposition to nuclear weapons being used in Ukraine. That's a nice little thing that they're coming. And also coming together on climate change as well. But yes, one of the big sticking points was, of course, Taiwan, and that was supposedly where things got a little bit awkward in
Taiwan. And also, I don't know whether it came up, but China are rather more neutral towards Russia, generally speaking, aren't they, than the rest of the world? I don't know whether.
Yeah, but I don't believe they've been supplying weapons and whatever. So I think that they
happy to buy oil though, and that sort of thing.
Well yeah.
What can you do?
Who isn't?
Yeah. So they were relatively cautiously optimistic about.
I think so. I think the thing
there.
is that any conversation and any communication is good, and then it also opens the doors to all of their underlings to start chatting to each other a little bit.
China are very good at making sure that doors are open, usually around the back. And I say no more. But what do you think, Nick? You feel optimistic about American-Chinese cooperation?
Oh, very optimistic. Well, the question is, with China, is cooperation more sinister than opposition? That's what I'm not sure about, because I like that they're both saying we both don't want nuclear war. Totally on board with that.
Yeah.
But then when they say we're going to cooperate on climate change and food and health, alarm bells for me, because you know, China's record on health maybe not great, and everyone's record on climate change bad, because I'm against the whole thing. But
climate change hoax. But
the whole
they
hoax.
Are the world's two biggest polluters. I mean, you say you think it's a hoax, but you yourself are a relatively small polluter, whereas China and America are quite evil.
I feel you put the words in my mouth a bit there with the hoax, but I feel that, you know, it's a carte blanche to do whatever you want to your population when you say there's an apocalyptic threat. It's more how I would say it. But yeah, no, I've got a tiny carbon footprint, barely worth remarking on. Theirs is massive. Just a quick word on what you said about Botox. You know, there's a whole movement on the internet thinking Biden's a different person.
Yes.
His face is so different to how it was.
Basis.
Yeah, so it goes way beyond Botox.
Somebody did say that, and quite seriously, they said, because they've done earlobe analysis. There's a certain tribe on Twitter, at any rate, who look at photographs and go, here, Biden, when he was a sort of 45-year-old Senate with a command of the language, he had these ears, and now he's this dithering old fool, he has these ears, and it's obviously... But somebody has said genuinely that's because he's had a facelift. He has actually had...
Oh, really?
We're doing great work in the earlobe community, but the other thing was, it's the first time they've met face-to-face, but Biden thought they'd met about 20 times, apparently. Couldn't remember. I made that up. But it's quite...
mistaking him for his teddy bear.
Yeah, it's quite a harsh joke. But, yeah, I don't know. But, I mean, yes, I'm pro not having nuclear war. I can't stress that enough.
That's good for you, mate. Going against your base.
And finally, Josh, you mentioned this earlier, population hits 8 billion.
Yes, that's pretty... Yeah, today is the 8 billion.
Ring out the bells.
Yeah, and I believe tomorrow it's going to be 9 billion.
Yeah.
And it's going to be going on...
Well, there are some people... There's a number of interesting discussions about this, which we don't have time to go into in depth, but it's hotly contested whether we'll ever hit 9. They think it already... it could be baked in.
With the sort of one-child policy, now they're desperate to have children in China.
Yeah. China are absolutely not going to be driving that, and they are in decline already. I think India are likely to overtake them quite soon. Nick, which front page have you been gifted?
Well, I've been gifted, Simon, The Guardian, which is an extraordinary turn of phrase. They know me so well. And they've gone with Tory councils warn Sunak on stark risk of bankruptcy. Now, this is Kent and Hampshire, who were talking about possibly going bankrupt. Now, before, it happened in Northamptonshire, Slough and Croydon, but no one really cared about that. But these are places where politicians might actually want to live.
Yes.
Kent and Hampshire.
Or at least have a second home.
Exactly, second or third. So it's a very serious thing. And they're, of course, citing inflation, but also rising pressures in social care. And they're saying here that there's only two solutions, like to either fund councils properly, lol, not going to happen, or remove the outdated and under-resourced legal obligation of town halls to provide services such as libraries, pointless stuff like libraries, and home-to-school transport. And knowing that where we are with austerity, or austerity 2.0, I suppose, you know, that'll be the one that goes.
Home-to-school transport does sound like a bit of a... that's quite generous, isn't it?
It sounds quite important, though, doesn't it?
It might be for children who need that.
Oh,
help.
OK, yeah. Well, it is very tricky. I know they say their main two... Well, obviously, inflation has hit everyone, but also... and things they need to buy, but it's social care they're worried about, isn't it? That they just... There's been a massive escalation in social care.
Yeah.
This, I say all the time, it's the most boring but pressing issue. Demographic change, the ageing population is... We've got no plan.
Yeah.
We just keep whistling, going, la, 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 I can't hear you.
But it's our job to make it exciting, Simon.
Yes.
So let's do that.
I do agree with you, Kent and Hampshire. They feel a bit more like, well, the Garden of England traditionally, isn't it, Kent? I think we might have a slightly outdated image of Kent in that respect. But Hampshire is actually quite lovely. Parts of Hampshire, I do think need protecting.
And those are Tory majority councils. So, I mean, once it really starts affecting the bedrock of Tory voters, I think we're going to start seeing a bit of revolting.
However, that photograph that you can see between your two matching jackets there are of another two matchingly attired gentlemen. That's Sunak not being badgered by councils, but having a nice little conversation with Justin Trudeau. And I can't help feeling there is some body language and there's some sort of... It was like when he met Macron the other day.
Mirroring.
He's kind of a... Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of, like, rapport, isn't there?
Yeah, they're, like, rolling up their sleeves and they've got really tight white shirts on.
It's a return to Blair, because they're all Blairites, aren't they? Yeah, Macron and Trudeau, they're all in that kind of mould. And some people say it's the WEF that have moulded them in this place. But I think Blair's success actually was quite important in terms of demonstrating what a modern leader could look like. And Sunak is the first one we've had since that kind of fits into that.
Well, surely Cameron was a continuation of Blair.
Cameron,
which
he
is a bad
was a
thing.
bit, but he never really convinced with me. I can't picture him in that. Can you? It's a bit.
Well, he was a bit too stocky, if I see what you mean. He wasn't quite as trim, but he definitely was
Face
the
like
heir
a ham
to Blair,
satellite,
as
you know,
everyone says. In policy, he copied Blair. He started off trying to be more Tory, it didn't work, or more right-wing, then he just became a poor man's Blair.
Detoxified the nasty party,
Yeah.
But do you feel, I mean, it turns my stomach personally, but I think it's probably good for Britain that we have a number of, like, instinctive allies in this respect. What do you think? I think there's possibly maybe a bit of optimism there.
Yeah. What, in the G20 stuff?
Well, with Trudeau and stuff, you know, a lot of...
But Trudeau's evil, isn't he? I mean,
Johnson walking around, you always felt like he was... It was like he was like Trump in that respect. He just didn't fit, did he? You know what I mean?
But surely we don't want to copy Trudeau, who said that he admired China's basic dictatorship. I mean, what does that mean?
And has ushered in a new era of assisted suicide by the sound of it, which is... I don't know if that one's coming up later, but...
When you see Macron and now only a week later we start getting some actual movement with France, like you sense that actually this stuff, it matters to a degree.
I agree with you. Are we going to cover that one now? Yes, let's talk about that. By all means, the movement with well, it comes up in two cases, doesn't it? We've got the Daily Mail. Why don't you do it off the top of that?
Cool. So, yeah, Daily Mail, nurses paying price of migrant crisis. Suella has signed a £63 million pound deal with France. That's going to increase things like drones. We're also going to have UK border agents in France as well. They don't actually have any direct powers, but the idea is to start catching these people. There's a lot of coastline for them to interfere. And they're not saying this is going to cure it immediately, but it's definitely a step. It's like active steps in the right direction.
Quite a small budget, isn't it? It feels quite a small amount of money.
Well, when you think of the billions that have seemingly been lost recently, like going up 6 million or whatever doesn't actually seem that big in comparison to certainly the press this is all getting. But one of the... I guess side effects of what's happening is in York, where, you know, they've been importing nurses and nurse students from abroad. They're being kicked out of 2 hotels up there to make way for the migrants.
I mean, this is a novel twist on the traditional right-wing complaint that my granny can't get a council house because all the asylum seekers have got them. And now it's other...
one migrant.
That's right,
I sort of think if you try to come up in a lab with, like, the least popular idea for Britain, it would be turfing out nurses to allow migrants. You know, everyone loves nurses.
Yeah, but they're Albanian nurses, so it's fine.
Well, that does make it more complicated.
And
because
in York as well. I mean, you know, it's one thing when they're near the beach. You know, you might think it's a stopgap, but by the time they made it to York, presumably that's a relatively...
Yeah, but as you say, it's to plug a staffing crisis, and then on top of that, we've got a crisis that supersedes the other crisis. This is the country now, multiple crises competing.
It's an omni-crisis.
But some good news, though, on the Daily Mail.
Crisis.
We've got that beautiful picture of our king there on his birthday.
Well, do you know what? I mean, I genuinely do think it is quite a nice... I always like old men leaning against trees in Tweed.
Well, I think the sad thing is they haven't shown the full tree, because the tree itself is pretty impressive as an oak tree. And his new title now is the Ranger of the Park. And I got to be honest, I think that kind of sounds better than king.
Well, that was what...
his dad, I think.
Wasn't that what Aragorn was in Lord of the Rings?
Oh, is that
He's
what?
a
Maybe
ranger,
that's going back to my childhood.
Yeah.
So that's why I think. But I want to be the Ranger of the Park.
I've partly thought that because it is Tolkien leaning against a tree that I'm thinking of as my favourite.
He was a ranger, but that was a kind of demotion. He was in a kind of he was sort of in clandestine mode as a ranger before he reassumed his
the broken sword
kinghood.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But I like this photo because, like you say, the full one which we just showed on the screen is that you see the sunlight. It's sort of beautiful sunlight, and then the tree itself, to me, probably is trying to represent the royal family. It's an ancient, sturdy oak. Although I did notice part of it was hollow, which might be deepening the metaphor. Yeah, well, there's that. And
it's a constitutional oak.
Yeah, exactly. But the only thing I didn't like was the expression on his face, where he looks a bit trepidatious to me. Maybe that continues the metaphor as well. I don't know.
He's also got a very big sort of cane there.
He loves the high...
He's got a high cane.
The three-quarter...
What is that, for hitting the poor people?
The staff, and sometimes they sort of branch out into various...
You don't think there's a sword in there or anything?
I don't know. It might be the brandy inside. My in-laws brought me back a sword stick from Morocco once.
Oh, really?
And they didn't know. They genuinely went through customs.
Oh, really? You know what it could be in there?
I was like,
it could be a pen. It could be a fountain pen.
Yes.
That's what he needs.
Which he then get irritable with, yeah. Oh, bless him. I think he looks at home. I know, over the many years, younger viewers may not remember, he was obviously mocked for talking to the plants, going to the greenhouses and encourage the orchids and all that. But he is somebody that's at home in nature. You can just tell. There are some people who are just more comfortable there, and I think he should stay there.
The only problem is he prefers plants, Simon. That's why he sort of wants to he's not so into humans. He wants this global Marshall Plan for climate change where plants will rule. I'm paraphrasing.
Plants don't talk back.
Camilla. I mean, she's named after a plant, isn't she? Yeah, the Demoiselle de Camille. That's
all adds up.
Yeah.
Always learning.
Every day's a school day. It's very, very lovely picture anyway. Congratulations. And who wants to do the star?
I'll have a crack at the star because it's my kind of level. I'm not even sure I can. That was accidental, Simon. I'm just on fire.
It was excellent.
It's a clucking disgrace, is what the star have gone with. And of course, this is a reference to the new egg shortage. We're going to have egg rationing. You can only be allowed something like 3 packs of eggs or something, which still seems quite a lot to me because I live alone. But of course, if you've got millions of children, that's not that many eggs. So it's because of this new chicken-based lockdown where we've got this outbreak of bird flu, of course. Yeah. So the chickens are on lockdown. What is it, 48 million or something they had to
Do you remember
get rid of?
Flu? I remember when that was the main threat.
That was like the innocent days, wasn't it?
Yeah,
like pre-pandemic.
And there were these little H5N1s.
You know what someone tweeted the other day? What happened to monkeypox? Is it a flaw in the marketing department? It's gone, hasn't it? It's gone.
You're right. There are some very great satirical cartoons I've seen of various things with like people just wheeling on stage scenery, wheeling off one that says COVID and wheeling on one that says Ukraine, and you do wonder sometimes.
It's that Simpsons Zika virus sketch, isn't it?
Yeah. The question is this going to then make a run on eggs? Already supermarkets...
Runny eggs.
Right, oh yeah, there we go. But seriously, is this the thing that sort of, it's like when they mention petrol and everyone suddenly starts going... It's that kind of thing where when all you have to do is buy one more packet than you normally would, and that's enough to throw the whole system in crisis.
What we need is egg wiener curry to come back
gosh.
Make everyone anxious that they've all got salmonella, and then people will steer clear of them, and then stocks can rebuild.
Very good.
Well, anything else on that front page that we need to know about? Other than to go to the World Cup.
Yeah, the World Cup. Are you gonna watch it or boycott, Simon?
I might boycott it, but for more political reasons than usual. I sort of watch occasionally, but I have no inclination. There are a number of things have happened to world football over the last few years. Yeah. For one thing, I think it's not of the same standard as the Premier League now, is it?
True.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's a weird thing about it. Most of the matches just aren't as good.
We used to be able to discover all these players we've never seen before, and now it's like, he's like on the bench for Chelsea. So it's lost the mystery.
You see a team and their one good player is the bloke who already plays for Villa.
Exactly. I mean, I'm quite looking forward to it because normally I never watch it. But this time I could not watch it and feel self-righteous at the same time.
I am interested, though, to see how Qatar steer around the whole thing. And I'm interested, I suppose, a little bit interested to see how the likes of Gary Lineker, play that ball.
Also, I'm just looking forward to see if English fans will break them.
Yes, that's true.
That's what I'm looking forward to doing. That's the one time I'm like, come on, England.
I suppose the funny thing is, I don't really know, until we see it, we won't know either, how effective I'm sure they have like air conditioning and all kinds of climate control mechanisms. But I do remember when it was in, I think it was Seoul and like South Korea and Japan, it was split between the two, which I didn't know how hot they were, but they were in the middle of the summer. And And England had pretty good results in the evening, but were just terrible during the afternoon. You know, England sides are just not used to playing in.
Well, famously, Paul Scholes couldn't hack it at all, one of our greatest players, but put him in a tiny bit of sunlight, it's all over.
Exactly. They just curl up. And I have some sympathy with that, you know. I have a very narrow window in which I'm always explaining this to my family when they're choosing holiday destinations. Like, well, go there if you want, but don't expect me to be, like, companionable.
In my five-a-side game, when it's heavy rain, that's my only chance against the Italians. It's true.
Well, that is it for part one. Coming up, we have regrets over Brexit, discrimination when getting paid, and Jeff Bezos giving away his fortune. I am always available, Jeff. See you in a tick.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
And welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans. On the panel tonight, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. So let's get back to it. We begin with The Independent. And Josh, you are a Ramona. Does this make you happy?
I know, I'm looking forward to all the tweets I'm going to get after this for going, oh, look at this. Brexit, this is the headline. Brexit damage is the cause of austerity budget, says ex-Bank of England economist. So this isn't just me, Mr. Boring, and going on and on about it. This is someone who actually knows their figures. Michael Saunders is basically saying we wouldn't be having the kind of budget we're about to have with all the tax rises and spending cuts.
Yeah.
If he's actually not saying that if we had remained within the EU. What he's saying, though, is the deal that was signed.
Right.
That's the difference there. So because we went for the hard Brexit, that's the problem. There's
Wasn't
been nothing
that hard? It was like
it's hard enough
stodgy, I would say.
Well, it's hard enough to affect us economically, and now you're having also an ex-minister who's basically come out and said that the Australia deal was pretty rubbish for us, and really we don't have any advantage from it. So these cuts, I mean, everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen. There's actually some good news coming from the budget as well for certainly people who need the help most. I think they're talking about putting up the minimum wage from like £9.50 to £10.40. They're also talking about £1,000 grants for the 8 million people who are on the lowest incomes. So they're
just like with your minimum wage. I mean, I know it's been a contentious issue for some time, but when they just put it up, I mean, there is inevitably, especially at the moment, some people are just going to lose their jobs, aren't they?
Well, I mean, that was the argument they said when they implemented it.
Has it never happened?
And then, no, it didn't happen.
Doesn't happen at all.
Well, for certainly, like, you still need people to work in McDonald's and all these different, cleaners.
No, you don't. I mean, they've all gone, haven't they? They've been replaced by touchscreens.
Well, no, but they still have the people making the food and whatever.
But there is a calculation.
Cleaning.
It does happen. If you think, OK, it cost me £9 an hour, so I've got a staff, and that costs blah, 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 over the course of a year, plus national insurance, or it goes up to £10 an hour, you have another look at the touchscreen machine that you can put in the foyer instead of in.
We are seeing a lot of demand for workers, certainly in the service industry, and bars and whatnot. So
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of hospitality jobs going begging, Nick.
Yes. What's that going to do with me?
You could fill it. You don't even start here until 11 p.m. It'd be an absolutely perfect job
I'm
for
here
you.
preparing for about 10 hours. This thing about this is all the cause of Brexit. Of course, in the short term, Brexit's obviously got some issues that we can say.
Yeah.
But no one knows if it will be a benefit in the long term for sure. But also, it wasn't done just for economic reasons, as we all know. If you care about things like sovereignty, it's a balance. If you don't, then it's just, of course, you see it as all bad. But I would like to add that, of course, obviously there's a weak macro picture, as economists say, because of lockdowns, because of supply side issues, because of the war, etc. But the Bank of England are not beyond criticism as well, because Andrew Bailey should have raised interest rates much earlier, which basically everyone agrees on. No one knows what he was up to. And also, most people think they did excessive quantitative easing post-2008. So it's not just Brexit, is it?
The Bank of England have clearly made a lot of mistakes, or at least made a lot of big calls, and things haven't gone well. So, you know, I mean, we'll never know quite what the counterfactuals might have been. But I would also add, they're not even mentioning the pandemic, which is one of the biggest events of my lifetime in terms of the impact.
But the UK has been the slowest to recover out of the rest of the countries. And by the way, the Treasury's own spending watchdog has essentially totally just said, right, leaving the EU has made us poorer. That's a fact.
I guess it's so. We'll have to wait another 20 or 30 years to see if it was worth it. The Guardian, Nick, UK criticised for a disastrous decision to cut health aid pledge.
Yes, although that is coming from The Guardian. So, yes, I mean, I think they're being criticised because they're cutting this global fund, and it was $1 billion. They've cut it to 400 million, sorry. Yeah. They've cut it by 400 million. But it's still a lot. But it's
still a billion.
Still a billion. Yeah. I know.
Right, isn't it?
It's still okay. And this is to fight things like AIDS and tuberculosis and malaria. And the criticism is other countries like Japan and Canada are increasing it while we're decreasing it. And it might be more than 400 million because the US are just in proportion, so it'll be 600 million in real terms.
Yes.
So there is that. But of course, people are worried about the economy here and getting through the winter, so you can see why there might be a lack of sympathy for giving away lots of money.
And also, mainly, this is the job of Bill Gates, isn't it?
Well, can I just add one...
like curing malaria and so on?
Yeah, well, one final thing on that. The Guardian, during lockdowns, which affect the developing world, where were they then? They were cheering on lockdowns. They have a catastrophic effect on the developing world as well. Yes. But now it's like, oh, it's all terrible, we've got to give them lots of aid.
I mean, they've pinned a number. They've said as many as 1.5 million people could die. That feels to me like snatched out of thin air, isn't it?
Preventable death, and it's always a hard thing to prove. But the other interesting thing is that the Global Fund, which is the recipient of this money, part of the problem is they're actually so good at their job that the money they get is sort of tied into the impact that they have. So they've actually done an amazing job historically, and that's sort of meant that they would be eligible for more and more money. So it's just an interesting thing that
it is
that
part
money
of
has
the
gone to good
mechanism.
stuff.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that because I know there was a guy called I think his name's Simon Edge who wrote a book called the End of the World is Flat or something about, and it's about that idea that when charities are too successful, achieve their goals, they have to create illusory new, and that I think is seen as a satire on Stonewall moving into trans, but it applies to a lot of things. It is a case that if you achieve your ends, nobody likes to go, well, that was good.
Well done.
Office for sale. But there's also, I mean, I don't know if it applies to this because I was looking through it, I couldn't find any specific mention of it, but I do think some British people feel a little bit dubious about the amount of aid that goes now to countries that have nuclear programmes and space programmes and so on. It's obviously a slightly more intractable issue, but you can imagine when austerity kicks in that starts to be a tougher sell.
Of course it does, and also, but a lot of this budget, there's also complaints that it's actually gone towards paying for like the Ukrainians to come over here and has been spent at home. But whatever.
OK. This is from The Independent now. You're going to move to Scotland, Josh.
I sure am. Sturgeon welcomes demand for Scottish child payment as website struggles to cope. So essentially, it was £20 per child a week.
Yeah.
They've increased it
with
to
no cap.
With no cap. Well, and now, with no cap in children, whereas in the UK, in England, it's down to 2 kids. Now it's going up to £25, and also they've opened up the eligibility. So it's anybody. You don't just have to be on income support. You could be a tax credit.
You just have to know a child.
Yeah, just know a child. So that opens up to another 400,000 eligible children. Now, I would get an extra £625 a month.
You could retire on that.
That's pretty.
Plus what they earn up the chimneys.
That's pretty. I wish. I need to get them working.
Well, that's probably means tested. You've got to be careful about that, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is obviously good for more money to children.
Incontinent families.
Yeah, it's more Lucas aid. But where is that money going to come from? I mean, already you have the Scottish government coming to Westminster. Well, coming to Westminster and saying, "Oh, we've got a black hole in our budget. We need to pay it." So then it's all very well and good for them to appeal to their own. And who's not going to do that? That's their country. Of course, they're caring for their citizens. But at the same time, where is that money coming from?
Yes, the Scottish child payment, also known as the Macbeth child payment. So sorry, some people at home will get that. And I don't have loads on it because I think Josh...
bad luck to give it its name.
Exactly, like the Scottish play. It was very, very highbrow, Simon. But
I thought
at
you
home,
meant it's like a from his womb I'm tinily ripped kind of...
No, well, you tried to outdo me there, because you didn't get it. Actually, but actually, I've won. But it's... I think Josh...
I didn't even know there was a game.
I think you've lost. I think Josh explained it well. The only thing I would add is that it's interesting the website crashed because, of course, government websites tend to be terrible. They should hire some of the unemployed Twitter staff to work on it. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, well, those are going to be... There's going to be an awful lot of holes they can plug between them, aren't there, over the next few weeks? The next story concerns Tuesday's Independent. Nick, fancy starting a charity?
Well, yeah, this is Jeff Bezos, who's... they say Independent's making a link here. They're saying Amazon to lay off 10,000 employees as Bezos vows to give away 124 billion fortunes.
They're two entirely different stories, aren't they?
They are, but they're sort of making a link. They're saying, basically, Bezos, why don't... If you're wondering how to give away your money, why don't give some to your employees or hire people or improve their...
people who've outlived their usefulness.
Well, yeah.
Because they're...
many people have said improve Amazon worker conditions as well. I think it was a fair criticism. But he's been criticised for not giving away as much as other billionaires, except to his ex-wife, of course, who's I hear has done all right. But, well, she's got like 34 billion now.
And also, she's remarried, so she's got his income. He's a chemistry teacher, but still, it all adds up.
I know, mate. It's just...
And that £25 a week from the Scottish government.
That's right.
Yeah. So...
Bezos.
It was a mere joke. The point is, there are billionaires who give away more, but what Bezos wants to do is give it away in a clever way. He calls it a more levered way.
Levered way? Yeah, I noticed that. Do you think... Because I was trying to work out what he means. I mean, he might just mean that kind of effective altruism thing, which, of course, has recently become notorious with the FTX guy. But does he mean like levered, like a mortgage is a levered purchase, like it's multiplied by other people? Do you know what I mean? That's what leverage usually means in finance.
Yeah.
It means like I've got 100 billion. So now you give me 500 billion, but
he wants to essentially be the Amazon of giving money away. You know, I mean, like a really efficient, customer-effective system where they come to your house and just give you money in like a really fast car.
You joke, but there is. I mean, there is an enormous industry that does think of itself in those terms. Sure. These effective altruism movement. It's a vast and it's a business.
Can I add one key point we've missed so far is that he gave Dolly Parton 100 million to spend as she wants. Apparently, she's working 9 to 5 to do that. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm back, guys, back on the show. To invest in
cantilevers.
And I think everyone can get behind that because Dolly Parton is surely one of the most widely loved figures. Like, I can't think of anyone that doesn't like her.
Well, she does. Yeah. She is like very experienced in charitable. She's
literacy. He's not just giving it to anyone. He's not just giving it to singers he likes. Shania Twain's not getting any.
She also hands out little multicoloured coats to poor kids, in the hope that.
No, she really knows her charity stuff, and she's done a huge amount in America to raise literacy and children's literacy, and libraries and whatnot.
I admire him for saying, philanthropy is not as straightforward as just going, like chucking money out of a, fast-moving car. I think that's true. You've got to think about it. And fair play to Bezos. He's achieved one of the world's most extraordinary... Because it didn't make any sense to a lot of people for a long time, Amazon.
But that's it. 124 billion. I mean, that's like 3 Twitters.
Yeah. Well, I hope he comes up with something good. But it is fair that he's laying off these... I mean, they've dropped 40% in share price, haven't they, over the last couple of years? All the big Silicon Valley, they dipped below $1 trillion. Imagine. The Guardian now, Josh, and Tuesday's Guardian, clear evidence of discrimination in the nation.
In the nation, yes. Minority ethnic Britons' educational success not reflected in pay study finds. Now, this is one of those articles where it's quite a lot of statistics and then they keep flipping it this way and that. And it's really hard to actually get to the nub of it. But basically, this IFS report, Institute for Fiscal Studies, found that ethnic groups are doing a lot better in terms of obtaining English and maths results, exam results, but essentially their money isn't going up.
Yeah.
And actually, there's been some real remarkable sort of improvements, they're saying here. Like 15 years ago, Bangladeshi pupils were 10 percentage points less likely than white British pupils to obtain good results.
Yeah.
And now they're 5% points more likely. So this is good. And
there have been some extraordinary advances.
yeah.
So there are some specific minority ethnic populations, communities, whatever, who do considerably better than the native white British.
Absolutely. Now,
children
whether it's reflected in incomes, they haven't really talked about how they got those figures. So if you're taking average incomes, well, you could argue that hasn't really pushed through into higher earners yet, who are more like 20 years ahead.
Exactly.
So when you start using these kind of figures, it doesn't.
It's always the thing that gets missed is age. As you get older, you accrue more wealth and you earn more money, and it's always missed out because that's right. That's why there's a gender pay gap among women. There aren't as many at board level because it was still 30 years lag from when the first great surge was created by Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few things about this. A professor here says it's evidence of discrimination in the labour market is clear. It's not clear, unless you mean when the BBC say the white people can't have this job. That's quite clear. But surely people are looking for quotas and things, if anything, but I don't think it's clear. I think that's their extrapolation. Really what it's saying is it's saying that although people, non-white people, are actually going to university more, their earnings aren't matched. But then it sort of forgets to mention, what about all the white people that don't go to university at all? It doesn't talk about them. But I understand the problem. It's saying you might not earn as much as your white counterparts who are also graduates. But I don't know what the reason is. I don't believe that that's clear evidence of discrimination. I think there might be multiple reasons.
There are multiple reasons, but also, the further you dig into it, the more multivariate it becomes, So there's more of them going to universities, but not to the best universities. Well, that might simply reflect the fact that there are far more universities than there were 20 years ago. I mean, vastly more, and they have... They've done the default thing to do at 18, haven't they? So
grade inflation and stuff.
Anyway, but it's nevertheless an interesting bunch of statistics to...
That's the best fizzle out of a story I've ever...
Thank you very much. Next, that is it for part 2. In the final part, coming up, we talk defensive women, the great filter, and Iraqi tourism. Those things all connect, I suspect. See you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans. Joining me for the funny section are Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Let's continue with some wacky stories now. From the Daily Mail, are you weighed down with guilt, Nick?
Yeah, well, a bit too much pressure to call this the funny section. I'm going to be very, very serious. But yeah, this is Emily Blunt saying that she feels weighed down with guilt as a working mother. Basically, that she goes back to work in Hollywood and she feels bad about it. She feels she has to overcompensate and over-explain, and people say to her things like, where are the kids? Which to me could just be polite small talk that she's overreacted to. Yeah. So I sort of question this. I'm not in Hollywood, maybe it is like this, but in my sort of observation of the culture, if anything, the pressure is to go out and work and be a girl boss, not to be a stay-at-home mum. Yeah. And since she's saying that you're told off for going back to work, isn't it the opposite in the culture?
I think you're exactly right, and it's 30 years out of date. I remember there used to be women used to do shows at Edinburgh about the the pressure they were under from the family to marry and have kids and stuff. I just don't believe it anymore. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's not norm anymore. It's not an enforced norm.
Well, actually, and the only example that she gives for this feeling guilty or whatever, or being pressured, is this example, the way she says, people asking where her kids were. Yeah. Well, her kids are 8 and 6. Yeah. So now they're in school. I'm imagining if they saw her in a film 2 years, it's quite a closed world. Yeah. So they saw her on a set 3 years before. She probably had her kids with her because they weren't in school yet. Right. So they're probably used to, I imagine she would take her kids with her before that point, and now they're saying, oh, hey, where are your kids? I mean, I literally think it's that simple.
But also, I mean, to be blunt,
nice.
She is one of the world's most successful, highly paid actresses. She has enormous resources with which to mitigate this stuff.
It's hell to
and
me,
the
Emily
idea
Blunt.
that she works in an industry where women are made to feel defensive, these are her words, made to feel defensive over their choice to work, nonsense. Women are made to work. That's why she's got a job. Films require actresses. It's absolutely absurd. There might be some industries where blokes are making sort of comments of that kind.
I have a touch more sympathy for the ageing women trying to get roles in Hollywood argument. Yeah. That seems to have some merit. Absolutely. And in general, ageing people get in showbiz. But yes, this seems to be questionable.
She does say, I bet Chris Evans isn't being asked that question. I don't know if that's because he doesn't have any kids or not. But also then she goes, or Andy Garcia. And I was like, whoa, you're right. His grandkids, maybe. I mean, that's a real
This
difference.
is Chris Evans, Captain America, not Chris Evans off the
But the reference fits when this story was last relevant. As you say, Andy Garcia is probably when this complaint last happened.
OK, Tuesday's Daily Mail. How sick are you of cis white men, John?
Oh, my God, they just made me so sick. Gettysburg College, this is in America, is forced to postpone painting and writing event for people who are tired of white cis men after backlash from students. And this is weeks after complaints about a drag show in the middle of campus. Now, the ironic thing here is that this was held by the Gender, Sexuality and Resource Centre, and part of their remit is, their mission is to ensure that every single member of the Gettysburg College campus community has access, and we're trying to establish a culture of support for every person to feel safe and empowered, of course, but of white cis men. I mean, the hypocrisy here is off the scale,
it's
as
extraordinary.
always.
And in Gettysburg, which is clearly most famous for an address made by a cis white man over a battlefield full of dead cis white men who had fought and died in order to liberate cis black men.
Wow,
I mean,
you've got
do
all
you know
your,
what I mean?
got all your names right.
It's, and women. It feels like they've lost their way somewhere.
Yeah, it just shows how far people have internalised critical race theory. It's absolutely hateful garbage. And it just would... Obviously, we know it would never happen in any other way except against white people. You wouldn't get, tired of Hispanic trans women. I do think people are getting a bit sick of it, though. It's quite interesting. There was some professor the other day said, I was... a middle-aged white man asked me if it's Miss or Mrs. And I said, no, it's Doctor. And she kind of was using an old trope. It's been used before that example, but I just replied to it, nothing worse than a white man being polite. It got like 5,000 likes, and I've noticed, which is not even a great tweet, but I've noticed people are starting to get sick of it, because for a while, the whole gambit of whatever you want to call it, woke world, CRT, has been, OK, we've got to protect everyone's characteristics, and we've got to be very, very cautious and worried about this, except for one group who you can openly hate, and you're encouraged to openly hate and despise and discriminate against. And people are finally getting sick of that, which is obviously... cis white men.
I actually saw that tweet, her tweet originally, and I was like... And then I actually liked it. And then I saw your tweet and I went, wait a minute. I'd sort of automatically done it. And I thought, no, Nick's right. that behaviour, like that's just someone being polite, and it was her. I totally agree with you.
Oh wow,
fair agreement, me and Josh.
Apology or something as well, something utterly useless in any sort of.
But it was just so snarky, and for me, when I read it, I sort of half read it, and I thought, oh look, she's got a doctorate, and it's nice for her to now be able to say I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
But then when I reread it, I didn't really take in that bit about a white.
Yeah.
Do you think that we are? I mean, well, you and I, Nick, are on Twitter a fair bit. You're a little bit less, Josh. I do feel I was a bit of a canary in the coal mine on this. I would say to my mates in the pub, oh, this woke stuff, and they were, what are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? So you think for 2 or 3 years, and I think it has a lot more people have woken up to the absurdity.
Well, my friends in the pub still haven't, but that's I meet up with the dads, my local dads, and that, and I was talking about trans issues and what was going on and Corbyn and whatnot. And they were just having none of it, and they thought I was like mental.
Yeah.
And I am a bit mental, but
I had a podcast about it like 6 years ago. My brother only learned. Only learned what woke was a couple of years ago. So it's getting into the mainstream. The only thing I'd add, just very briefly, is
someone steal that podcast?
Let's not go into it for legal reasons. But the only thing I don't like is a college kid here. He's quite within his rights, but he's saying the rhetoric is simply divisive. Now, when you attack white people in a hateful way, the worst people often say is it's divisive. They won't just say it's racist, which is surely what it is.
Divisive is a weasel word, I think. I mean, I think on this occasion it works, but often when people say you're being divisive, it means things were how I like them to be, and you've raised an objection to them, and now there's going to be an argument. Well, actually, sometimes you've got to be divisive a little bit in order to register that there is an iniquity going on. Do you know what I mean? I mean, but this is divisive, I think, this kind of language.
It is, but it's worse than that, is what I'm saying, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, for instance, they use the term an awful lot to describe certain politicians who are, supposed to be divisive. Johnson was supposed to be divisive. Trump was supposed to be divisive. You think, well, actually what's happened is a huge number of people have just felt trampled for a very long time and are going, sorry, hang on a minute, we also exist. And everyone's gone, oh, it's terribly divisive, because, you've woken up the peasants. Anyway, this is the Times now, Nick, and I think we should all go for dinner after the show off the back of this one.
Yeah, restaurants offer sharing menus to encourage patrons to spend more. So spending in restaurants has fallen 14%. Alcohol sales have gone down as well. And but coffee shops are doing better because people are getting coffee instead of eating. Yeah. So obviously I have a lot of sympathy for this. I grew up above a restaurant, and I feel for the restaurants. I might even start going to restaurants specifically, having read this, to help out. Because what they're doing is they're offering sharing menus. They're trying to entice people to buy a dessert, saying you can share it. And something like 1 in 7, there we go, 1 in 7 desserts is now intended to be shared. And so I might even start going to restaurants. The only problem is I have no friends, but I know social life. But we do need to go to restaurants to help out because they're struggling.
I'm sure if you were to sit down at a table for 4 and order a large charcuterie board, you would soon attract...
You should start some sort of campaign with Sunak. Some sort of restaurant-y thing.
Yeah.
What would you call it?
I don't know, try and eat out more.
To go out more?
Something like that.
Share out to eat out. Yeah. What do you think about sharing plates, though, Josh?
I'm totally fine with it. I grew up with a mum who just basically would eat my meals in front of me and order what she wanted.
Pick from them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So...
When our romance was first fresh, and that was one of the...
Talking about my mum.
My romance with your mum, yeah. No, my present wife. When we used to go out for dinner before we had kids and everything, we would always be trying each other's food. That was like a...
Yeah, that's the good thing about being in a relationship, absolutely.
And then when you have kids, you eat their leftovers, I suppose. That's still a sort of bonding ritual, isn't it? And then me and the dog fight over them.
Well, going for, being much poorer a few years ago when times were particularly tough, that was it. Order the kid. If we were our 6-month or yearly treat, it would be like order the kids' meals for them and then eat their leftovers. I mean, it's terrible to admit, but that was how tough things were.
That could be a restaurant theme.
It's also
kids' leftovers.
It's also a radical new diet.
There was that
tepid fish fingers on stale bread. Daily Mail now, Josh. I'm up for protecting the environment, but there is a limit, I think.
There sure is. Now misery gut environmentalists say your after-work pint or wedding toast is harming the planet. So this is an organisation that basically come out and points out all the different ways that drinking harms the planet, such as the growing of the crops, barley, hops and whatnot, the transportation, people not recycling because they're too wasted to be able to find the recycling bin. They didn't include hangovers, which I think, mean people do more fry-ups.
Yeah, that's true.
And more water usage or whatever.
A lot of carbon into the kitchen.
Yeah, but when you actually get to the end, it turns out that this is all from the Institute of Alcohol Studies, and they're actually like a successor to a temperance alliance. So really all they're trying to do is actually get people to stop drinking alcohol.
They just
and now
they
they're
found
using,
a new angle.
Hey guys, I've heard a lot of stuff about this environment. Maybe we should get on that whole bandwagon. That might work.
It might turn everyone off the environment. I mean, it might, it could be really backfired.
Absolutely.
The ultimate battle, alcohol versus environment. Yeah, they also failed to mention, this is all from the lockdowns. It says the shift to drinking from home in the post-pandemic world, which means post-lockdown world, has fuelled the need to transport alcohol to more locations. And it's seen a rise in individual cans and bottles being used rather than reusable kegs. So, you know, again, it's all due to the lockdown.
I don't know that that's true either. I do support the idea that we should drink in pubs more often and drink at home a bit less, or at least...
And then eat a shared dessert in a restaurant.
A social element.
I really think so, yeah, knitting things together. And that was the great thing about pubs. I used to, when I first started to learn how to drink, I drank with some extraordinary people, the likes of whom I've never sort of really encountered in regular life ever since, you know. But, I mean, I just think, you know, it's like walking into a Dickens novel or something, isn't it? A good old-fashioned boozer. And the culture where you can drink with other people, I don't know if it has an environmental effect, but I do think it knits communities together. Absolutely. Anything that creates community is a good thing, generally speaking.
But that's what they don't want, Simon.
I think you're right. I think that's more sinister than we've given it credit for. Anyway, Tuesday's Telegraph now, and another reason to stop your kids going on social media, Nick.
Yeah, they're saying half of teenagers have watched real-life violence and sex attacks online. So they polled more than 2,000 teenagers between 13 and 17. 55% had seen violent content online. 13% had watched a sexual assault, and so on and so on. And it's all very bad. And it's all the moral decline of our godless society. But the problem is, how do you tackle it? Because, you know, Nadine Dorris tried with the online safety bill, but the problem is then you encroach upon free speech in a dangerous way.
So just to clarify, this is like children sending each other videos that they've made, not YouTube or whatever.
I think no, it's social media. It's social media content as well.
Right.
It's just saying social media. Just saying in general online, they see this stuff. And so it's what do you do? I mean, to some degree, social media companies have to do something about it. But if they go too far, you know, they end up. I mean, they could spend more time on it versus like censoring Trump. They could spend more time on this, but it's very tricky because you don't want to encroach upon free speech. So it may be up to parents to just do their best. Although it's virtually impossible to stop people seeing it.
It's really scary. It depends where you live in London. Like, we live very close to each other. Good friends of mine, their son was just mugged the other day, just up in Ali Pali.
Right.
And it's scary. I've got a 13-year-old boy. He's coming home from school alone at late. It's dark. And it's scary.
Do you instinctively feel that the capacity of teenagers to share this kind of stuff, because there is a bit of a culture of that, isn't there? Like, look, what this is, you know, here's me, you know, terrifying, humiliating, you know, besting.
There's some horrible stuff out there.
Yeah.
It is horrible to see. And also, it's just that thing where to start seeing the reality of how nasty life can get. And, you know, they're a kid and they grow up at a certain age and you're just trying to protect them as much as possible, not just from the actual physical threat, but actually just...
Have they got mace?
No, but what I'm saying is also the idea that human beings do that to each other, and that their innocence, I guess, is what I'm also talking about.
Well, I don't know that we have a way of reversing that tendency, but, I don't know, phones... the root of all evil. Anyway, Star now, Josh, with a name like Dr. Death. But actually things get a bit jollier, in fact, with this story.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, I didn't read to the end.
He was a stand-up comedian in Edinburgh a few years ago.
Really?
With a show about elective suicide. Yeah.
OK, now Dr. Death is not his real name.
No.
OK, that's lucky.
Philip Nitsch.
That sounds pretty deathy. Yeah. Dr. Death scientist wants his do-it-yourself death pods to be installed in a UK city. I believe this actually, he wants it up in Scotland. He's proposed it there's an assisted suicide bill going through Holyrood at the moment, they're just discussing it. And the idea is it's this 3D pod. You're in it, it seals you off, and then you can press a button only that releases the gas from the inside, and then it would kill you. Suppose you're unconscious in 1 minute, dead in 10, but there's also like an escape valve and whatnot. The thought of learning how to do 3D printing depresses me anyway.
Yeah. So that might actually
lead you to it.
Yes, interesting. Yeah.
But they're called sarcopods, and he burnt his medical license in 2015. Old Dr. Death. And he's trying... But actually, they have approved these in Switzerland. But there was an interesting thing on Andrew Dawes' show, The Free Speech Nation, about a week ago, where they had someone from Belgium, and his mum had been given permission to have this assisted suicide, not necessarily in this pod. And it turns out that it all got pushed through, and then this person spent, like, years trying to track down... Like, this person just, like, called their mum one day, and she'd gone to this thing. And then he tried to track down the doctor, and the doctor he was trying to find out who did it turned out to be the person in charge of releasing this information. So it's literally taken him years and years through the European courts to finally find out and to sort of contest it.
Do you have a view on assisted suicide? It's obviously, I would say obviously, but you might be aware that there's been quite a lot of talk from Canada lately. There's a a man in chronic pain, but essentially functioning, but knew he was going to be made homeless, and he is entitled to choose assisted suicide or medically aided suicide or something over that, and and that's a legal option that he has as a result, rather than be homeless now, and it's kind of brought a lot of this.
Yeah, I'm against it, and especially Dr. Death with his little chambers, which some people are calling personal gas chambers. Pretty gross. It's no wonder he burnt his medical license. I mean, it doesn't say if it was stripped from him first, but we won't speculate because for legal reasons. But it's a godless society. They see everything as utilitarian, so why not have these pods that could just kill people? I find it all incredibly dystopian and disturbing. And yeah,
the slippery slope is real. Tuesday's Times. This is a valid theory about why we're alone. I'm talking about our species here, obviously, rather than
it's the great filter means we could die out before we discover alien life. Briefly, it's the idea that as we exponentially increase technology, we also increase the potential we'll destroy each other before we actually ever meet aliens. That's why, despite our technological achievements, we never get there. That's the theory. I don't believe it, of course.
So the idea is that all the aliens that did exist were made extinct even before they got as far as we have, because we've got far enough to send signals out and to receive them.
So they're already gone, because they've already gone from getting too advanced and killing themselves.
Yeah, but it would explain why they aren't visiting us, why they haven't got that much technology. But we have reached enough technology to be sending out, like, eternally,
messages, and to receive stuff as well.
Yeah.
I go by the theory, the more Star Trek theory, that we will not be contacted until we're ready as a society.
Yeah, but that's nonsense, isn't it? There is a lot of self-loathing. I read in this article, he's going, we think that maybe the aliens think that we're a terrible
I hated that.
It's nonsense. All species are bound to have evolved with the same degree of self-interest or whatever.
Yeah, it's saying the aliens would say that why do we feel proud? Because we fight, we have wars, we behave like children. It's just, like you say, it's anti-human rubbish. Yeah. This is all atheist propaganda anyway. We're created in the image of God, and that's why aliens aren't real.
You mentioned godless.
I know, the audience love it. We're
can't say that that's
based.
definitely true, but I do think it is extraordinary that although we've had, since the Copernican revolution, there's been obviously an ever vaster universe and not a single other life form. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Join me again tomorrow at the same time with Leo Kurz and Roger Monkhouse. And if you're on catch-up, next up is breakfast. Goodbye for now. Thanks very much. Good night.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's Breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Tonight on Farage, the final bill this year is £63 million we will give to the French to try to stop the boats crossing the English Channel. Will it work? Will it hell? Is what I think, but we'll get your opinions on that and debate it. FTX, the crypto exchange that collapsed over the weekend. Investors owed huge sums of money. The financial press full of a story, no mention that he's one of the biggest funders of Joe Biden's midterm campaign. We'll ask why. And joining me on the King's 74th birthday, Grant Harold, his former butler for many, many years. We'll find out, how does Charles like to spend his birthday? But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, as you've been hearing, the UK will pay France an extra £8 million this year to help stop illegal migrants crossing the English Channel. The total number who've made the journey so far this year has reached 42,000. And a warning, the following pictures contain some flash photography. Well, the UK has agreed to pay France £63 million this year. That's up from £55 million last year. The Home Secretary agreed on a